Are you ready, kids?
God damn it.
No, Captain.
I can't hear you.
I said no. Now start the review.
We had to get that out of the way at some point.
I know.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, welcome to our fourth and final review of the evening. SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. Henceforth, we're just going to call it SpongeBob Rehydrated. Because, dear God, that is a fucking long title to say. Anyway.
And we're not going to go with Spubs.
Exactly. Even though that sounds like the kind of thing that would be on the show. You know, full disclosure, I've seen some early SpongeBob SquarePants, like first few seasons. I know I got a basic grounding in SpongeBob, but I'm not going to get a lot of specific references, especially if they're later on when the dark times happened. But it's like, anyway. So first of all, we have already done a video on the multiplayer segment of Rehydrated here. If you want to hear more about that, go and look up our multiplayer playthrough. We didn't get through the whole thing, but that's because the connection broke, and it turns out that we would have to go through the whole thing again. It is the multiplayer is a weird amalgamation of horde mode and regular platform level, where some specific cut content appears, the robotic Squidward. Anyway, getting to the game itself, SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom was a PlayStation 2 era 3D platformer. Really beloved by the people who played it, and I'm guessing a lot of people played it. I've heard this game be classified as a cult classic. That's a weird thing to attach to a SpongeBob SquarePants game, if I'm being honest.
What with SpongeBob SquarePants being, the Nickelodeon thing.
Not just the Nickelodeon thing, but the Nickelodeon thing. This is their
the.
Yeah. It's not just say Avatar or Ren and Stimpy or insert lesser Nickelodeon franchise here. Really, I think the only Nicktoons that comes close in terms of franchising was Rugrats, but that's another topic for another day. But
also
yeah,
kind of another show.
Yeah, well, it's like SpongeBob SquarePants has had a shit ton of video games, as you'd expect for such a popular, marketable children's character. Seriously, I think he's like 20 games of varying degrees of quality. Battle for Bikini Bottom is cited as, usually being the top of the top. Not just good for a licensed game, but a legit good game in its own right. There's definitely merit to that. Did not play the original game back in the day because, well, it was a SpongeBob SquarePants game. Didn't really tickle my fancy. Plus, since it was the PlayStation 2 GameCube era, there were other platformers that I could endeavor in. This is still the tail end of the great platformer, the great 3D platformer golden age. This is not just when you got, the big mascots, the big icons, and the children's characters, but you got B grade platformers like Vex and Dr. Muto and onwards. And that change, all that changed when we got to the HD era.
When the Fire Nation attacked.
I'm like, well, you bring up Avatar, but Avatar is a good example of the Avatar games are a good example of where even the kids' games went in the 7th generation, because even they moved away from strict 3D platforming and into like linear third-person brawling. Like seriously, there's just a shit ton of licensed game that were like the same licensed game, but different characters. Monster vs. Alien, Ben 10, what have you. This game definitely harkens back to the early 2000s when you were getting games that were much more inspired by Mario 64. In the case of Battle for Bikini Bottom, I've heard it compared to Mario 64. Now, this is definitely more related to a Rareware platformer than Mario. I will say it's got a better design structure than the Mario platformers of the day in terms of, oh, hey, it doesn't kick you out of the fucking level when you get the collectible object. The Rareware platformers did that as well. Granted, that was a mechanic that was used better in Super Mario Sunshine, but we're getting off track here. So SpongeBob, his task in this game is, well, Plankton has created some evil robots to steal the Krabby Patty formula.
As you do.
That's pretty much his entire shtick. Like, except the robots rebel, they kick him out of the chum bucket, and Plankton manipulates SpongeBob, not too hard, into defeating the robot menace and, bringing peace to Bikini Bottom.
Because that's one of the job securities of a villain, is that it's usually not too hard to get the hero to do something good when you fuck up.
Right. And the golden spatula conceit is, well, that is the literal toll. Like, the levels are sectioned off via toll booths because you drive to the areas via taxi, and that's the payment for the taxis, apparently. It's a 3D platform.
Why they want payment in cooking utensils, we just don't know.
Well, it's a reference to the show. Like, I know the golden spatula appeared in an episode of the game. This is the kind of stuff you're expecting from a SpongeBob game. Not just, it's like the solid level design, the solid platforming, that's all a bonus. You're expecting a lot of, well, SpongeBob fan service. And it's there. Interestingly enough, it's not based off of individual episodes. I think there are games that have done that, but it's like, you go to areas and, it's a new plot, like Jellyfish Fields is a good example. I do remember watching, like, the Jellyfish episode, and it takes a lot from that, but it's its own thing here as well. It's a nice balance between the two, Or like Rock Bottom shows up. I do remember, like, they have a direct reference to the Rock Bottom episode. If I don't remember the specific titles, once again, like, only a Fairweather fan at best. But, this is a game that gets the characters better than some other SpongeBob games. I have seen some video footage, and, it didn't break some cardinal rules, like, SpongeBob doesn't get his license. Thank you, Phantom Strider, for pointing that out.
What he does in the game and he's not supposed to, or?
Yeah, like, there's a PC game that came out in 2001 where he gets his, technically his learner permit, but apparently that's, like, one of Hillenburg's golden rules. Like, SpongeBob will never get his driver's license. Like,
sure, why not? I guess it facilitates him being a complete man-child.
It's not my golden rule, so, another thing is, like, in some of the early video games, he has a thing for sandy cheeks. And that is definitely not a thing that occurs because, well, in case you missed it, SpongeBob is canonically asexual, which is not a surprise. I always thought he was that, not just because he's a sponge, but, he's not a character that really screams out interested in romance. especially with a land squirrel.
From Texas.
You know, but once again,
Also, I like how you qualify land squirrel as if there were many other kinds.
Technically, here she's a sea squirrel.
No, she's a land squirrel in a scuba suit. There's a difference.
This is going to get really semantical really fast, and I'm just going to halt it. But my point is, like, Sally... sorry, I keep confusing her with Sally Acorn.
That's a different franchise.
I know. It's just similar names. You know, Sandy and SpongeBob aren't actually supposed to be a thing because he's not actually interested in that. But, you know, when you get to supplemental material, sometimes they're not keen on the details like that.
Mm-hmm. They're friends who do stuff together.
Yeah. I mean, very specifically, Steven Hillenburg said that Sandy is supposed to be a strong female friend, nothing more. You know, yeah, I did some research for this because, yeah, my SpongeBob ain't the greatest. You know, what I can speak to is 3D platforming. You know, one of my favorite genres, in spite of how infuriating they can be at times. And yeah, it's like having played through the majority of this game, like about 70 spatulas in, you know, last set of levels. It's also a long game, like as you'd expect, because this was a full board PlayStation 2 title. You know, maybe a little cheaper because it was for kids, but you know, you were still expecting tens of hours of content from it. And yeah, it's still there. Like, it'll take you about 20 hours or so to run through.
Unless you're a psychotic speedrunner, but that's a whole other thing.
Not a psychotic speedrunner. Like, speedrunning, interesting you bringing it up, because speedrunning is a really, really important part to this game. This is where the cult part really comes in. Because the speedrunning community is really the community that's kept this game alive. Yeah, it's a favorite speedrunning title, and that's not diminished with the remake here. Because it's got, you know, this is a game from 2003, and it's like, this is a very weird remake, or because what they did is they took the 2003 game and they put it on Unreal Engine, but they somehow managed to retain a lot of 2003 aspects. I'm not talking like base design, like of course the levels are going to be the same, but it's like the physics models. Mentioned this in the multiplayer, like they've got that early 2000s, hey, you know, before dedicated physics engines kind of velocity to them. Which is bad because that shit wasn't exactly the most accurate thing in the world. Trust me, I've had instances where the throw fruit just like bounces off a thing.
It goes into its own zip code.
No, it just kind of thuds down.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. Like there's no getting around it. This game, once again, don't know if it was in the original game, but there is definitely a veneer of unpolished to it. Jumping feels fine, but landing on platformers is surprisingly sloppy. Like, you know, there's a good chance you'll slip off and go into the goo. You know, for the record, SpongeBob SquarePants is an underwater He's in an underwater location. So
it's already underwater. So when you see water, it's goo.
Yeah, and they will tell you it's goo. And sometimes the physics for certain areas we get all sorts of wonky. And also there's a number of bugs. Like apparently some of the bugs were from the original game. Some of them are new. Like the speedrunners discovered it immediately, and the world record is like 2.5 minutes. Like, the game is buggy enough, especially for as buggy as the PC version is. I understand that the console is magnified. Not the first time this has happened with a THQ Nordic title. Um, Purple Lamp has already released a day one patch for Rehydrated here, and they are currently working on a second patch. So that kind of shows you that, yeah, this game was rushed. But, through the miracle of modern game development, you don't have to release a second version with the shit fixed. You can just do it in post. I know people like to complain about that, but motherfuck,
Shit like
having a
this would
game
have called for a recall, and
Uh-huh.
you may or may not get the game back.
Mm-hmm. And have to differentiate between the different versions. Like, for all of the problems, like, this is not one of them. Getting shit fixed after the game is out, I have no fucking problems with that, because I have lived through games that have had game-breaking bugs that never got fucking fixed. I'm looking at you, Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy. The original version that got fixed in the remake, but that's the thing I'm talking about. It was kind of a crapshoot if the thing got fixed in the first place, because maybe the game didn't do so well.
Yeah, and didn't get like a greatest hits release, which is like the only way they'd get the fixes in.
Yeah. Or, it got the second version because, you had to get rid of a Muslim chant. My point is, no. Post-game patches, I am perfectly fine with. I will never not be fine with that.
More of those, please.
It depends on how the state of your game. Like, fixing Rehydrated here, yeah, I'm fine with, because this game needs fixing. I'd say, like, in fact, that's the biggest hurdle to recommendation here. Just how unpolished it is. Not unfinished levels, but it's definitely going to affect your enjoyment. Possibly. Unless, I guess, you're purchasing this for speedrunning purposes, which is valid. It's just so weird to me that this game was kept afloat by speedrunning. Anyway, in terms of actual design, well, once again, it's very typical 2003, let's follow like Banjo-Kazooie kind of level design, and tasks. Like, you have to, some of it is you have to get to an end of a place. Some of it is you have to, collect a certain amount of things. You might have to do something. You might have to defeat an enemy. You might have to get to a place in a certain amount of time. Also, because this game was from 2003, there are extreme sports segments. Like, good God, that is like one of the most 2003, early 2000s things about this game. High half-pipe segments. Can you tell that?
Squareboarding?
Basically.
Square tonguing, but yes.
Depending on the level. Like, there is an actual snowboarding stage. But there's an actual ski lodge level. And there are people who claim that this is the favorite part of the game. I'll be honest, I found this rather slipshod. At least in the later stages, where the level design gets narrower, where there's a greater chance of falling off.
So you're saying that it's nothing compared to Tony Hawk's Pro Sponge?
No, it's not that in depth. It's more like very basic snowboarding. Like, you don't even do any tricks. Which is a difference from some other not like adventure or platforming games that actually tried to do that in their snowboarding or skateboarding segments. Didn't do anything. But, it was just like, Tony Hawk is popular. Let us have that in our game. It's okay-ish, but I found it way too easy to fall off the half pipes. Like, just, it felt due to general sloppiness, not actual good game design. But like the half pipes themselves were mostly fine. Although that last half pipe in the kelp forest can go fuck right off because it's a visual mess. Like it's amazing how you can lose a yellow sponge in a field of green, but they managed to do it. Um, anyway, as you can see on screen here, you don't only play as SpongeBob, you also play as Sandy Cheeks and Patrick, and they have different move sets. In terms of move sets, the not a lot in the way of jumps, but the jumps are differentiated depending on the character. The reason why you would want to play Sandy here is because she has basically a hover jump. She's the one who can clear big gaps.
Because it's a cartoon, so Lasso works as a helicopter.
Yes, it's reasonably close to the real deal, if you will. At least in terms of cartoon logic. And every character has a standard double jump. By the way, like if you want to know the status of a B grade platformer, it usually has a standard double jump. Like when you think of like say the Marios, the Banjo, the Crashes, the Spyros of the world, none of those have a double jump. It's more when you get down on the platforming totem pole is where you get like double jumping. It's not bad. It's just for whatever reason, like having a standard double jump like you would see in a 2D game means you're a lesser platformer. It's weird.
You're less of a man.
Yeah. Anyway, Patrick's big unique move is throwing things. Usually the throw fruit, which are watermelons, that don't last very long because they don't want the thing getting stuck. That also figures into gameplay. Like you have to rush a bit. You can also throw the tikis. Like in terms of collectibles, it's respectable. Your baseline stars, jiggies, what have you, collectible are the golden spatulas, but there are two other collectible types. There are the shiny objects, which confuse me because they're more colorful than they are shiny. Like they don't have any sheen to them. I don't know why they consider them to be shiny, but that's less important than what they are. They're basically the money of the game. Like, you will have to use a certain amount of shiny objects to open locations or open a optional spatula challenge, or you just flat out buy golden spatulas from Mr. Krabs. Because if you remember his whole gimmick, he likes money.
I like money.
Yes.
Why did you do that? Money.
Also worth noting, no, Clancy Brown does not show up because the voice work is from the original game, at least the English version. Apparently, the English work is so iconic that THQ Nordic said, we'll just reuse that. Granted, there was no way they were going to be able to replace Mermaid Man's dialogue because Ernest Borgnine is no longer alive. But, all the English voice work is from 2003, or whenever they recorded it, maybe 2002. All of the other languages have new dubs. Yeah, and it's a bit of a weird one there, but I'll have to take their word for it. It's as iconic as they say it is. And anyway, the other collectible is Patrick's dirty socks. Get 10 of those in a given level, or not even a given level, like just 10 of those, and you'll get another golden spatula. The golden spatulas will add up to 100. There is a 100% bonus completion thing. Not only do you need 100 spatulas, but you need like 40,000 shiny objects to get into the theater. As for what the 100% completion thing is, like I think it's a blooper reel or something along those lines. Not sure if it's worth it, quite frankly. Not sure if it's worth getting 100%. But
At least this was, the
we're not
reward for back in the day.
So
yeah, I'm like, it's a miracle if we even finish a game for review. Like I said, I put 20 hours into it. Actually, 23 hours if I'm looking at my playtime here. And, like I'm almost to the end. It's just, we only have about a week or so per game thing. So, like, I had to move on to the next crop of games. Maybe sometimes I'll go back, but oftentimes I don't. But it's like I put in enough playtime to get a real sense of what Battle for Bikini Bottom has to offer. Like I said, it's a solid platforming game, and I suppose it's helped by the fact that you don't get a lot of platforming games these days. Stands out that much more because it's a 3D platforming game. That being said, I do think this is the worst platforming game that THQ Nordic currently has on offer, because they have other platforming games, and I would definitely recommend both the Blob games and the Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy game. Two of these we have previously reviewed. Like, we reviewed the first The Blob game and the Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy game a while back. And it's just like, once again, SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom. The basic platforming and all that's good. That's solid. And as a SpongeBob game, it seems to be aces. It's got way too many technical hurdles for me to say it's a good, solid buy. Maybe when patch number 2 comes out. But as it is right now, I have to temper recommendations here.
I don't think we went over price.
Yeah, I don't think we have gone over. Yeah, so the price. Okay, so this is a bit of a jangle here because THQ Nordic has gotten into the habit of releasing really stupidly expensive collector's editions. But, in terms of sane pricing, in terms of, what your average person is probably going to purchase this for, this game does clock in at $30.
Do they have an edition that comes with an actual spatula?
I think that is the Fun Edition. Seriously, there are 2 of these. There's the Shiny Edition and there's the Fun Edition. And they're really fucking expensive. Because there's a whole, like, treasure trove of useless plastic shit. There's a whole bunch of Tiki figures. Like, there's 3 fucking PVC figures at 8 inches.
That's rather large, actually, for a collector figure.
Yeah. Like, there's a reason why the Shiny Edition is, like, $150, and the Fun Edition is $300. This is not factoring into our pricing discussions because, you kind of have to be at a certain mentality to buy these in the first place. In terms of regular base edition pricing, what a parent would probably be plunking down for their kid. This game retails for $30. Steam also has the option to buy the soundtrack. In terms of graphics, it's I think this is going to be a bit of subjective measure because there seem to be people who don't like the new look of the game. Because, okay, this game is a lot brighter than the original. In fact, like the 2003 edition looks quite a bit drab compared to this. but apparently like the 2008 game is more close to the cartoon show. I didn't really get that because SpongeBob always seemed to be a very bright game, and the renderware version always came across as kind of real as brown. Like it seriously got a muted color scheme here that I personally do not like. Like I like like maybe the remake's a bit too bright, but I think the remake gets the art style better. But that's a subjective thing. Now, obviously, in technical terms, Rehydrated is the much better looking game, because it's been reconstituted in a modern game engine. It runs in the renderware of our times, Unreal Engine 4. Like, now as far as the music goes, like, how do I put this? I think I mentioned this back in our other video, but the music is good. Like, I'm not sure if it's like directly from the show. Like, I want to say the Jellyfish Fields theme comes from that episode, but it could just be for the show. Like, if nothing else, it's definitely music and tunes that are very idiosyncratically SpongeBob. Maybe outside the boss theme. Like, it's got a bit of that, but it's also like weirdly, it's this techno beat that I didn't feel quite fits, versus like the something that hummed a lot more. But once again, all of it works. Like as a SpongeBob game, this is pretty top notch from what I can tell. And at $30, if like, it's a mild recommendation. Once again, if the second patch fixes a lot of the technical issues, I could go a full recommendation. It's more, the game is too sloppy. The game is too riddled with bugs. The fact that they have to do they did a day one patch, and they're doing a second patch, is a testament to that. So, like, as for the game itself, technical issues aside, I'd give it a 7. Once again, I don't think it's I don't think it's quite on the level of THQ Nordic's other platforming games, but that's mainly down to all the technical issues. Like, I hope I'm getting that point across. Like, this is just a game that's so marred by technical recommendations. I'm knocking the score down a notch. 6. It's a 6 out of 10 game. It's a bit too rough for its own good. Petty, what about you? What are your thoughts on Rehydrated?
It's pretty alright.
I mean, I'm trying to think more like, the target audience here. Like, they're probably going to love this, and, parents are probably going to get them this game anyway, because it's a SpongeBob game. Like, from what I've been hearing, like, sales have been pretty good. It's had a pretty hefty ad campaign. That and Desperados 3. Something kind of the code for that. At a certain point, like a game, us reviewing a game like this is a bit pointless, because, it's selling on the strength of its branding.
Mm-hmm.
But,
branding and nostalgia, of which we have neither particularly.
Yeah. But, I mean, this is a special case because, this was a game considered to be good enough to remake. Like, that does not
happen. Which is very
happen.
rare for licensed games.
Yeah, it's like, you got to be considered to be something fucking special to be a licensed game and get remade. Because, there are all sorts of issues getting licensed games up to the modern age. It's probably easier just to make a new one. in like the case of THQ Nordic, they probably, own all the game code, own all the relevant assets, and it was just a matter of, you know, getting the SpongeBob license from Nickelodeon. I can't speak 100% on that because, this is the kind of thing an interview might clear up, though this is also the kind of thing that might not get talked about because NDAs. But I can say that, if anyone else remembers Teenage Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time Reshelled, another, that was a full bore remake. Like, that wasn't just like taking the original game and update, they built a new engine, they built, new fully 3D graphics, which kind of ruined the game, but that's beside, it's like, they were planning on having the original music, but then a thing at the last minute came up in terms of the rights. So that's one of the things that can really hamper your a re-release of a licensed game. A lot more licensing issues. Like the music might not necessarily be part of the game, or like that was done by a composer that did things in that style or whatever. The point is rights issues prevented the original music from showing up in that remake, and wasn't an issue here. So, and indeed, THQ Nordic has a very specific Nickelodeon license. They have a license to bring back old THQ Nickelodeon games. Mm-hmm. I won't say that this is the only one of those that's worth bringing back, because I did play a Nickelodeon platformer around this time. It was just the one I played was Tak and the Power of Juju, which was actually a fairly decent platformer from what I remember. But we're talking a good 10-15 years ago since I played that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, if they start releasing, say, Stimpy's Invention or the Are Real Monsters Genesis game, that's the time to put the brakes on it, because, okay, I played that was my growing up with Nickelodeon games, and they fucking sucked. Like, they were just abject garbage. I'm pretty sure that younger generations of people will have that same experience with the GBA versions of like SpongeBob and various characters. But anyway, so yeah, SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, solid platformer, just needs polishing, so much polishing.
I mean, he used a sponge so we can get to work on that.
Anyway, so that'll about do it for this installment of the Silicon Reviews. Coming up on the week ahead, we will be having on Wednesday, July 8th, Emmanuel Floret of Pixel Racers. Now, despite the name, we're not talking about a racing title.
Is it a pixel game at least?
That is accurate. It's just more the racer thing. Mm-hmm. Because so what they and no, not Super Pixel Racers. Like, trying to remember the game that like it's basically the Tetris effect, only not. That is to say, it's a it's a puzzle game in the vein of Tetris, only in VR. And it's not techno infused. It's more minimalist. Yeah, it's actually really interesting. It's a game that works only in VR. So I'm not sure if we're going to be able to show footage from the game. Here we go. It's Vectrex. Yeah. it's kind of in the title there. V is for VR. Like, there were a lot of Tetris clones that did this. Some done by the Tetris creator, like Tetris or Weltris. You know, like I said, a really interesting game. If we're not able to show actual game footage, you know, we'll just do the YouTube thing. Anyway, and yes, we do have a Friday show. On Friday, July 10th, we will be interviewing Nathan Hamley of Sick Chicken. We've actually covered a game of theirs. If you remember the adventure game Guard Duty, I think we reviewed that last year.
Maybe. I remember the game.
Yeah.
The window.
So we'll be talking about his new game, Chasing Static. I suppose an interesting addendum to this is this is actually a developer that was referred to us by Radalaikia Games. Apparently, they're funding this. You know, and yeah, I finally got a direct response from Radalaikia. They said they themselves were too busy to do an interview, but they recommended this developer for an interview.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, Chasing Static is a first-person psychological horror short story. So much like another Radalaikia game that we covered, Sagebrush. I mean, I know that was just published on the consoles, but still, closest thing I can think of. Anyway, so that's the week ahead. And until Wednesday, I shall wish you good gaming.